Welcome to iChongqing. China's 2020 government work report has released during the two sessions. For the first time ever, China has set no GDP growth target due to the global pandemic and trade and economic uncertainties. In this year's government work report, China is going to drastically shorten the negative list for foreign investment and will also actively to expand imports and foster a large, globally oriented market of higher standards. Today, we have with us Mr. Paul Sives, Chairman of Southwest China Chapter of European Union Chamber of Commerce in China. He will share with us his point of view on a government work report, especially in the foreign investment area. Hello, Mr. Sives.
Good evening. Hi. How are you today?
Good evening. I'm good. Thank you very much. You take the time from your busy schedule to take the interview from us. So these 2 days, a few days you are in Beijing, right?
That's right. I just arrived in Beijing today, and we had the European Chamber annual general meeting, which I've just come away from. So been a busy day.
Okay. Then thanks. And also during these few days, actually, China's two sessions are ongoing, right? It concluded just today, and I think for sure, the one very important thing, the government report, which highlights what's China's development strategies or goals will be in this year. So, but let's I introduce for the first time, actually, it set no specific GDP growth target for this year. So we would love to hear what's your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, as I think everybody knows, China has, for many years now, 20 years, I think, set growth targets every single year. So this is the first time there's been a dramatic shift in policy, but it's understandable. And I think, the COVID-19 outbreak is really going to have a massive impact on demand for goods. And of course, China, as we know, is the workhorse of the world. So many products are manufactured here. So any impact on global growth is going to definitely impact on China. And I think there was a realization clearly at the highest level of government that setting growth targets in this kind of environment was clearly impractical because in the situation we're in now, it looks like there may be actually a negative situation rather than growth. So as I see it, and from what I understand, there's more of a focus on internal growth. And that is rather than export-led, putting, a significant amount of money into businesses inside China to help them grow. So this is quite interesting, and I think it could be very beneficial for the internal Chinese economy.
I see. So also in the government report, it is also there are highlights for the some beneficial policy that goes to the foreign investment sectors. So what do you think the European companies, right, can pick up from this message? What messages should European companies pick up in terms of China's further opening up from this government work report?
Well, of course, opening up has been something that we've been talking about at the European Chamber for China for a long time. Opening up is very important, and a balanced opening up across the economy and being fair to both foreign invested companies in China as well as Chinese companies. And I think this is a positive sign if indeed it materializes in positive change. So I look forward to see how this materializes over the coming months.
I see. Actually, since the outbreak of the COVID-19, there are for example, the many of your member companies, right? They are based in China or have business in China. So their business may, to some extent, for sure, more or less will be affected. So could you share us some of about the information, how is the situation of these European companies now in China?
In February and March, We've had to sort of overcome those initial restarting issues to get the businesses up and running again. And I have to say, I think China dealt with that in a very positive way. Clearly, the outcome is really very good because it appears that China has managed to eradicate the virus, and that's very positive because the businesses can now open up and move forward, and we can live our lives in a more close, not exactly normal, but close to normal way. But the impact around the world is just massive, and that is going to impact and affect the growth in China and investment in China. So if we look at the government suggesting in this work report that they want to help companies make it more attractive for investment in China, that's great. It's understandable and very necessary. However, are companies going to come here at the moment? I'm not so sure there'll be a rush of companies to come to China right now, very much because of the situation around the world. There is a global depression, which is starting now. The economies around the world are going to be severely impacted. So I think there'll be a lot of inward looking around the world. But that doesn't stop China from trying to open up more. And it's a massive opportunity, I think, for China to look into itself on how they've been dealing with trade issues and consider how opening up can actually benefit the companies that are already here. So, of course, there are many, many thousands of European and other foreign companies that are active here. And many of those companies are very much hoping for a further opening up of the economy, perhaps a more balanced view of projects, meaning that when there is a big project which is being competed for, there's less of an emphasis maybe on state-owned enterprises, that foreign companies can equally bid for projects on, as I said before, a level playing field. It's very important and can benefit the economy enormously by this opening.
I see. Appreciate of your opinions on these issues, and also because you are also involved a lot, I think, in Southwest China's the business sector, right, between China and Europe. So could I hear more details about how is the companies, I mean, in Southwest China or even in Chongqing, how is the recovery, resume to work goes, and also what are the measures taken by the company themselves or the local authorities to help this business to get through the tough time?
Yes, well, we cover Southwest China, which means Sichuan and Chongqing, and we've been quite active in supporting our member companies during, especially in the opening up period in March, February, March, April. And I have to say the local government in Chongqing was very supportive to assist the European companies to get started as quickly as possible. Of course, all those companies had to implement the proper measures to make sure social distancing was taking place, the wearing of the mask, and having the proper cleaning regime within those companies so that everybody was safe. And I do believe our member companies were very actively supporting these measures. And this led to them being able to open up fairly quickly. So the same applies in Chengdu as well, and in other parts of Sichuan. Our member companies had similar supportive activities with the government. And there was a clear impact on businesses, financial impact. And I have to say that both Chongqing, Chengdu, Sichuan provided an equal measure of support for both foreign invested companies and Chinese companies alike, providing social security payment holidays, so the companies did not have to pay Social Security for up to 5 months. And those companies that may have rented their facilities from government-owned properties were given a certain payment holiday on the rents from those properties. And this, I believe, was equally measured across both Chinese and foreign investors, which is great. That's exactly what we want to see. So I'm very happy to be able to give you that information, that so far it has been a fair and balanced support.
I see. I'm also happy to hear that about the supportive measures. We also appreciate it. And also, actually, like you said, COVID-19 has posed the global challenge now, right? And the economy, worldwide, or the business activities, investment is kind of not as dynamic as before.
Sure.
So how do you see? After all the measures China has taken so far, right, to support each other, to support the companies here, no matter domestic or abroad, to try to support it through that time. So from this kind of scenario, just how do you see the prospect for the foreign investment environment in China, after the epidemic?
Right. Well, it's a very good question, and you do hear about foreign companies reconsidering their supply chains. So this is something that was discussed and still being discussed about the reliance upon China for the supply chain of different businesses around the world. And I do think there will be some reconsideration of companies to give themselves more security and supply chain security. So looking at possibilities of having other factories around the world that can also duplicate what their facilities in China can do. But supply chain in China is very well developed, and the cost base in China is quite attractive. So it's not so easy for companies to look elsewhere, to set up elsewhere. So I think this is something, although companies are looking at it, it's not going to happen instantly. And we have to bear in mind that the global economy is going to be severely impacted. So I think it's going to be a strain for foreign investor companies in China, and a strain for Chinese companies in China to come up with new ideas, to come up with new ideas in order to survive this situation. Because it is going to be quite a few months, I believe, of economic impact. So I would also hope that the Chongqing government and other government, district or municipal governments around China could further look at how they can support both the Chinese companies and foreign investor companies alike in these difficult times. And I think that's what the work report also has identified, because China is not looking so much for growth right now. There's no growth target, but they do want to support companies inside China. And that means not just Chinese companies, it means foreign investor companies inside China that also employ an enormous number of staff in China and keep the economy moving forward. So I think in the coming months it's going to be difficult. I do hope the governments will provide or look into providing more support.
Thank you, Mrs. Sives. Thanks for all your brilliant answers. And that's all for our interview this time. Thanks very much for taking the interview with us.
Okay, thank you very much, and say hello to your listeners. Thank you.
Thank you.